is David Lichtenstein, and welcome to the Yeshiva Shalmaila. And this week we're going to be speaking about the horrific events that happened in Pittsburgh last week, the Akedah, a modern-day Akedah. Anybody who goes to the site of the Shul, the Tree of Life, Shul in Pittsburgh, could stop by and he say, this is the site of the Akedah in America. You know, the Rambam writes, and I think it's Parak Beis, of Beis Abchira, Mokim HaMizbeach Meduyek Moed. That's where Yitzchak was nekad. Well, here where they killed Jews because they were Jews. And what does the Chassam Sofer in Chelik Beis and Shin Lamed Gimel says? When a Jew, even if he's a Russian, no matter who he is, if he's killed because he's a Yid, what does the Chassam Sofer say? He says, he quotes the Gemara that the pasuk goes on him, Nosnu as nivlas avodecha, Maicha loif hashemayim besar chasidecha. So Chassam Sofer says he's an Eved Hashem, and he becomes a Chassid if he was killed because he's Jewish. So it's been an outpouring of grief. We speak to the Rabbanim in Pittsburgh. They say people are coming for Nicham Avelim, for husband and wives that were killed, brothers, sister, all kinds. A doctor who rushed in because he heard about it. He rushed in just to get killed. So he said there's been an outpouring of a Haftal Arecha Kamoicha Vavas Yisrael. So this week we're going to be speaking about it. And additionally, we'll be speaking about is the halachis. Should we in America, is it a wake-up call? Should we have a few mispalim in every shul that carry guns, both in the weekdays and on Shabbos, so you don't have horrific stories of people hiding out in a closet for an hour and a half, not knowing whether they would be killed or not? Where somebody opened the door to check, he was shot in the head. So a few mispalim, but then there comes all kinds of shilas. Can you bring a gun into a shul? The Mechaber, I think it's in Kufnen Vav, says you're not allowed to let knives into shul. Is there a difference in this case? Is a gun muktzah, right? Can you carry a gun in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, or is it considered a beged, like the Aruch HaShulchan says? Is that an accepted opinion? Or if it's not an accepted opinion, do you say, well, since it's a sakana, it's Leicha Shabbos, so do we say, wait, sakana, this is a pretty remote sakana, one event that happened in the last 200 years. What is considered, how imminent does an event happen to be where it's considered a sakana for Shabbos? So is it proper chinuch? If you want to have in yeshivas, in every yeshiva, what's wrong? If in every base medrash, if you bachram were trained, or on the contrary, is it bad chinuch? We're going to be speaking about this and all of these topics, both in halacha and hashkafa. We have a wonderful group of guests. We have from Pittsburgh one of the Rabbanim who's actually struggling through this situation. In Pittsburgh, Reb Shimon Silva, Talmud of Biston, etc. Now he's a Rav in Pittsburgh. We have Rabbi Shuey Biston, who's the Chabad rabbi of Parkland, Florida, where they had a massacre, and four children from his shul were killed, as well as one of the teachers, one of the adults was killed, was a member of his shul. We will have a Rav from Queens, Rabbi Yoel Schonfeld, will be speaking about the shul. So these are very contemporary halachic issues that we will be discussing this week. And we will, of course, we will have recordings from two Rabbanim who have a very different position. A rabbi from Great Neck, who came out very condemning this community because it was a conservative community. The bris that was happening there was of a gay couple, and he was fiercely screaming against it, to making machos, etc., as well as from Cleveland, Rabbi Brog, who tells a Talmud, tells a mechutin. We'll be hearing their opinions about them. But before we begin, I would like to say a short vart, and last week was Parshas Ve'era, the Parsha of the Akedah, the week that this happened. Listen to this stira. And it's not my riddle of the week, but it should be, because it's such a good question. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, Amar Rababo, Lama Toikin b'Shofar Shel Ayil. Why is Shofar Shel Ayil used on Rosh Hashanah? So the Gemara says, Tiku Lefanei b'Shofar Shel Ayil, Kedei she'esker lachem Akedas Yitzchak ben Avram. It will bring the memory of the Akedah when we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Umaylani alechem ki'ilu ikadetem atzmechem lefanai. We blow the shofar to bring the memory of the Akedah on us. So here's the problem. In Vayikra by the Teichacha it says, V'zacharti es brisi Yaakov, Va'afis brisi Yitzchak, va'afis brisi Avram esker. But there's no zechira. The word zechira is by Avram and by Yaakov, not by Yitzchak. So what does Rashi bring from the Chazal? Lama leinemar zechira beYitzchak, because afrei shel Yitzchak nira lefanai tzavar umunach al gamei mizbeach. The offer of Yitzchak is sitting on the mizbeach, the ashes of Yitzchak, smoking hot, gathered. So there's no zechira necessary. So wait. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says we blow shofar so that to kindle the zechira of the Akedah. Rashi brings from Chazal, Rashi Vayikra Chavav Membeis, that Yitzchak needs those zechira because the ashes are smoking on the mizbeach. Well, does it need zechira the Akedah? Doesn't it need zechira? So let me suggest an answer. It says, Ma'ilani alechem ki'ilu ikadatem asmechem. When I was in the Mir, a bacha came to Rabbi and he said, he missed the tainus, and he was not exactly an oinus. So the Shulchan Aruch says that you have to be ma'ila another tainus. You have to fast another tainus. He said, I have a good idea, he told Rabbi Nachum. I went to a pidyon aben. A pidyon aben, it says, ki'ilu is'ane pei dalet tainesim. It's as if you fasted 84 times. So he says, if I ate by a pidyon aben, I had a piece of herring and some kugel and some kishka. It's like I fasted 84 times. Why should I have to fast now for the tainus that I missed? So Rabbi told him, when you go to a pidyon aben, it's ki'ilu hisan. It's as if you fasted. So he said, that's good if you're missing a ki'ilu tainus, as if you need a fast. He says, but you're not missing a ki'ilu tainus. You missed a real tainus. So for a real tainus, you have to have a real, a commiseration. You have to replace it with a real tainus, not with a ki'ilu tainus. So here it says, blow in front of me, b'shofrei shel ayil, k'dei she'ezker lechem akedes Yitzchak, u'malani alechem ki'ilu ikadatem. It's a memory, something that never happened, akedes Yitzchak, even the Zohar says it did, but the Torah pashas it never happens. He says, the schira of this event that almost happened, that we're going to be ma'ila. But there's another chazal. It says the ashes are smoking. What do you mean the ashes are smoking? Yitzchak never died. So I think that the pshat is true, Yitzchak never died, but with the Akedah, Yitzchak was prepared to die. So he set forth an example forever for Klal Yisrael. There are times when you will have to die, and I got lucky, I didn't, but you won't. And that happens, when? It happens every generation. And it happened last week in Pittsburgh. 11 people really died. And those ashes, what does the Torah say? Those ashes really are smoking. They're red hot. They're smoking. And these ashes never need a memory. So I think that there are two types of ashes here. There's the ashes of by the Teichacha, Zacharti is Brisi, Avram is Brisi. Those don't need a schira. Those are the ashes of the Yidden of every generation that are killed because they're Jewish. On Rosh Hashanah, it's neged Eilo Shel Yitzchak. That never happened. It's a kilu. It says B'mayla in front of me. I think that is a possible answer to this stira. But last week we really did see a real Akedah. Now here, let's listen to two rabbis who seem to feel differently about it.
I'd like to share with you something that my son, Rabbi Yehuda, just called me. He asked me, the innocent voice, he says, Abba, what do you say about the massacre? And it sounds like he's going to cry. But I'm trying not to be two-faced. And I said, excuse me, the conservative on Shabbat? I said, Rabbi, you know what it says on the holy internet? It's called advocate.com. You know what the Brit Milah? I have a little Ruach HaKodesh. A little, not so much, a little. He told me, you know about who were the parents? I said, yeah. And Hashem sent it to me. 2 men. This is the Brit Milah in a conservative shul, and the 2 men adopted a boy, and they do Brit Milah, and you wonder why it was a massacre. And now you want to go say Tehillim for them. That all of us should learn how to behave 2 years ago to go to the club in Miami, according to those rabbis, and tonight to go to join the Tehillim for those ones that made the Mabul. And I said, I'm not sorry for this disaster. And people in the shul today made faces when I said, I'm not sorry. I said, listen, 95 years old. You attend the Brit Milah of two men? What bigger person for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And you make a Brit for the boy? This is something that a person has to know in his life. He cannot be two faces. He cannot be nice. He has to be straight with Hashem. All those people that go tonight, they're against Hashem. You protest against Hashem. This is not Tehillim. This is like spitting in Hashem's face. And you like it or you don't like it. That's the emet.
So what did this Rabbi Aderet say? He says it's a conservative shul. I have no feeling about it, right? Is he right or is he wrong? Let's go, He's from Bnei Brak, he said, and he said he's a Talmud of Bnei Brak. So let's look at the halacha. Let's not talk hashkafa, al drush, you could answer 10 different ways. And he said it was a bris for gays, even though many of the people who just went for Shabbos davening, who didn't go for gay, but they're all there, and they're deserving of it, and therefore don't say tillim, etc. Let's see, is he right or is he wrong? So let's start. You're from Bnei Brak. Let's quote two Chazanishes in two places. The Chazanish in Yeridea, Siman Beis of Katan Chasches, and as well as another place in Siman Beis. He says it in two different places, the Chazanish. What does he say? He says, the question is, are you Mechal Shabbos for a Frayid? For an Oiver Averis? So what does the Chazanish say? He brings the Rambam in Perigimel of Hilchas Mamrim, and he says that the first generation who leave the Torah, they could be considered Mezidim. But he said that their children are never considered Mezidim. Why? Because if somebody has a father, he's a Reform Jew, and his father he sees as an Adam Mechubad, he goes to shul, whatever many times a year, and he gives charity, he gives the bonds of the UGA, this kid grows up thinking, this is the real Judaism. And you look Hasidish, Litvish, well, guess what? I have a different Kabbalah on Judaism. So what does the Lashon Rambam say? He says, B'neim v'talmideim, after the first generation, chashivim ka'anusim u'ketinik shenishba. Right? So therefore, u'mitzuvim anul hachayoisei v'af l'chalil olav ha-Shabbos v'shvil hatzalasei. That's the Lashon of Chazanish. You mechal Shabbos, Hatzalah member, for a person who is totally fry. He's an Avarian. Total Avarian. Right? And the Chazanish brings Agoyis Maimonides that it's Asal Sanoisai. And then the Chazanish says, in case you don't trust me, the Chazanish says, I'm from Bnei Brak, you may not think, but he says, who is the greatest Paisik of the last generation? Was the Mishnah Berurah. So he brings the Mishnah Berurah. In Sefer Havas Chesed, the Mishnah Berurah brings from the Goy and the Gri Molin, he brings a Goy and a Tzaddik, right? That mitzvah lahev eser eshoyim, the Lashon of the Chazanish, right? And he brings that this Grimalin brings it from the Merchuvas Maram Lublin. He says because the whole heta to hate a rush is after you mechiachim, and he says there's nobody who can be mechiach bisman hazeh. Why? So the Maram Lublin says because we can't answer them. It's too many years from Nevuah. Ruach HaKodesh is too far from us to be able to tell somebody, let me prove to you that you're wrong. Let me show you. So the Maram Lublin says, mitzvah lev eser ishayim bizman hazeh. So we have the Chazanish from Bnei Brak and the Mishnah Berurah, who both say that they all have a din of a tinik shenishba bizman hazeh. Besides many of the other poskim, obviously, the Tzitz Eliezer paskins, Lagabe Hatzalah, I could list you the whole peckle of Achronim Upaskin, which is how our Hatzalah members, of course, do. So this is on the tzad of are they indeed Avaryanim? The Pasak is an apple. Let's say this gentleman from Great Neck feels that he wants to be a Kanoi and they are Avaryanim. So let's continue. So you have a real Avaryan. What's the halacha? So the Sam Saif, and he's basing it on a Gemara in Sanhedrin. What does the Gemara in Sanhedrin say? The Gemara Sanhedrin says that Haruge Besdin, don't have a kapara, right? But haruge akum, right? Haruge goyim. What's the halacha? Somebody who's nerag mitoich rishay while he's a rasha. Kivan de lav ki urche mayis. The Gemara says he's not dying a natural death. Havele kapara. The Gemara says, and the Gemara brings this pasuk: Nasnu nivlas avodecha psar chasidecha lechayseyaris. My avodecha, my chasidecha. Fact the Gemara. Lav chasidecha mamish. Kivan de iktal karule. Since they're killed, it's karule avodecha. Do we paskin like this? And our Zarua says, the Gemara says, Zarua says on the place, halamadata, the bein abayil bein larava. If he's nerag mitoich rishe bidei akum havele kapara, right? And beis abchira, what does the Shulchan Aruch paskin? Shulchan Aruch brings 2 days, whether you're misablin on them. And what does the Shach say? It's not clear how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. That a mumur shenerag bidei akum, you misablin alav, and he brings this pasuk. He brings the Gemara, right, of the mumur sheneri b'dei akum, right, misase kaparu misavlin alav, and he brings it. That's what the Darkei Moshe brings, the Rosh, etc. That's what the Shach paskins, the Chachmas Adam paskins the way, the Bir Agra paskins that way. Most of the great Achronim paskin, like the Maril. What is the Maril? The predecessor of Psak in Germany and Poland. Kivan de Nergu mitoich rishon mikri kodesh the Chassid. So he's not called a conservative Jew, and he's not called the gay anymore. He's called a kodesh and a Chassid. The Maril says, right? What does Rashi say on B'sar Chasidecha? So Rashi says, Rashi in Tehillim Ayin Tesbeis, v'haloi rishoyim hayu, ela misha kiblu peranusayim harehem chasidim. That's how the Rambam, Rashi in thing. Many other Paiskim, the Daiv of Mesharim. But here's the Lashon of the Rambam in the Maimer Kiddush Hashem. Interesting, right? But many of the other Achronim say, even if he's Nerag al Yidei Listim, would be the same thing, which is a chiddush, Pashas Zirasan anti-Semitism. But here's the lashon of the Rambam in the Maimer Kiddush Hashem, and we will of course put, as we always do, all our Marakaimis online, so you don't have to. If you're a Rav and you're saying it over, you want to learn it, you could just look at it. Here's the lashon: Ish sheyizkeyu hokel lalois b'mayla el yoina shenereg al kedushas Hashem, which the Samsaif and all these people saying he's nereg al yedei akum, he calls him a kodesh. Right? Listen, here's the Lashon HaRambam. And we're not talking about some achron from the last 100 years. Kivan shenera afilu hayu avaynoisav kima Yeravam ben Nevat v'chaverav. Even if his averas are like Yeravam ben Nevat v'chaverav, who brought the whole Klal Yisrael down to its knees. It split the thing. 10 Aseres HaShvatim disappeared because of Yeravam ben Nevat v'chaverav, right? Who ben Olam haba. That's what the Rambam says. And he says, Makaim shaharuge malchus oimdim. Listen, ein kol beria yechayla lamoid b'mechitzasan. So the people who go to the Levaya of these harugim, or they go to Bimenachem Avel, what does the Rambam say? Makaim shaharuge malchus oimdim ein kol beria yechayla lamoid b'mechitzasan. Right? And if it's interesting, if you look, Rabbi Menashe Klein has a few tshuvas because it was obviously relevant. He was somebody. He went through the war and he lost a lot of his mispalim to the war. Listen to his lashon. Kol adam Yisrael shenereg al yedei goyim. He has a 3-page tshuva. Harei ze bechal hakedoshim shekidshu Hashem vein adam nichnas b'mechitzasei afilu hayu rishayim gemurim. Which is why the minig of Klal Yisrael, if you talk about how do we refer to the 6 million kedoshim, how many of the reform of these people lived in Germany? They Shabbos. They didn't know anything. They were reform. They were worse than reform. They had no shaykhs to anything. What percentage of Poland was religious before the war? 50%. We call them all kedoshim, right? So he says kulam b'chal kedoshim, right? Shekitshu Hashem vein adam nichnas b'mechitzasei. And then he finishes v'hinei. is so relevant to these rabbis who are speaking against them. Bisman ha'achrein Rav ha'michshel. A michshel, it's a big michshel is coming out. Shemevazim chas v'chalila mekadshe b'nei Yisrael umizalzalim b'chavoid hanerogim al yedei akum. This is the lashon. We will of course put this online. He says afilu einem. He says ulu pa'amim afilu etzel charedim. Imagine charedim making such a mistake. Shu bezoyin mekadshe Hashem b'rabim. Right? Sharolem Rab Mara. The Rabbi Shalom should be Michael people who do something like that. This is the halachic answer to the conservatives, then a gay, then whatever, from the Gemara, from Rishonim, Achronim, and from the Shulchan Aruch, how we pass in the Shulchan Aruch. So that would be my response to these. By the way, here is what Rabbi Weinberger said about this opinion.
And sure enough, there was an obscene, a vile clip of some rabbi going around yesterday, and I understand there's more than one, but the one that was circulating, a number of Bachim sent it to me, and some Balabatim sent it to me, and I could only listen to it for a minute, or I couldn't listen to such obscenity. And it was what I was most worried about. I only thought there was going to be, well, these are conservative Jews, they were davening a conservative temple, so, that was one thing I was worried about. But then when it was Megala that it was also, that there was an Indian there, two men that adopted a child, and that was the day that they were making the bris, this is what I was told in the temple. So that would give ammunition to the Chachamim from the Erev Rav. That's a compliment from the Sitra Akrav Mamish.
Now here is a quote from this Rav in Cleveland.
The next piece of wisdom I heard, that it's a message of anti-Semitism. That's the message. Surely, somebody called me yesterday, it's for surely a message of anti-Semitism. And we have to face the anti-Semitism. I said, there's definitely anti-Semitism. If you thought it was a chiddush, it's not. But I said, I want to explain to you something. What brings the sinner of the Goyal? The Beis Halevi in Parsha Shmois discusses this. What determines whether Goyim express a love for us, or whether Goyim express a sinner for us? And he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us clearly in the Torah what he wants from us is that we should be separate from the Goyim. Havdalah we give in the Torah and mitzvahs. Hashem says, I want you to be muvdalim. I want you to be separate. That's number one. The Medrash's lashon is ma shemen, just like oil. Einoi misarev, does it mix with other liquids? Af Yisrael ein ma'arvin in b'nei noyach. You got to understand, there's no mixing. You have to stay separate. When Yidden act and move toward behavior with and act like the Ummah Yisraelim, the nations of the world, Hashem turns their heart to hate us. That's what you got to know. It's amazing if you think about it. If you were, let's stand this outside for a moment. Think, if you were this anti-Semite who hated Jews, and you wanted to kill Jews, where would you go to kill Jews? Would you go to a place where they drive on Shabbos, they don't observe the Shabbos, they don't wear beards, their tzitzis are not out, they don't wear yarmulkes, you're not sure who's who and what's what, or would you choose a place like Williamsburg? That's where you think you go. Then you're guaranteed you're getting just Jews. You go to the frummest shul in that city. Now the guy was in the Jewish neighborhood. and he goes to the temple, the synagogue, that's the furthest away from echte Yiddishkeit. It's mind-boggling. I would tell the guy, advice, if I was on the Eshkel Mamre, giving him advice about who to take out, I would say, no, don't start this over there. There's a lot of non-Jews there. Half of them are married to non-Jews. You never know who you're going to hit. You may not even get Jews. You may get a bunch of Episcopalians. You don't know what you're going to get. So why would you go there? Go to a place. Find a place where the rabbis with big beards, those big black hats. They wear those shawls in the street. They have strings coming out of the jacket on all sides. That's what you want to get. But the Beis Levi says, when a person in Klal Yisrael emulates the nations of the world, Hashem turns the hearts of the nations in the world against you. But when somebody stands up and looks Yiddish and acts Jewish and understands that he's muvdal, he's separate, you're going to gain the love and the respect of the nations of the world. That's the fact.
And here's what I would just respond to this Rav who says that that when you emulate the Goyim and you try to look like the Goyim and you're conservative and your goal is to look like one of them, that's why it causes anti-Semitism. They just had the Har Nof massacre. And I heard a speak, he said, usually when he says we kill, they say, oh, it was probably Freya, it's the soldiers. When it was in Merkaz Arav, well, maybe they wear kippot strugot. But when it happened in Har Nof, it was a Vasikin minyan. And it was full of Rabbanim, Talmidei Chachamim, the people who are makbid to daven Vasikin, the biggest Shomer Torah mitzvahs. What happened over there? None of these people were conservative reform. They weren't emulating. They didn't even wear kippot strugot. There was just a Yid killed, Yerushalayim Chassid with the long beards and payas, Rav Krashevsky, was stabbed in Malcha Yisrael. Right? But let me ask him something more than that. This Rabbi Brog is a son-in-law of Rabbi Baruch Saratsky in Zechariah Levracha. Telz is one of the only yeshivas. The whole yeshiva was nishchat al Kiddush Hashem. The Rosh Yeshivas were killed. The Magidei Shiurim were killed. The Mashgichim were killed. The Rabbanim were killed. The Talmidim, in one shot, the Nazis killed all of them. Is somebody, chas v'shalom, going to say that these people were maybe conservative? Maybe they were trying to emulate Goyim? Maybe they were trying to intermingle with the Goyim? I don't understand. Somebody would say that about chas v'shalom, the Haruge, the Kedoshim of Telz? And let me ask you something more. The whole musig of Esav, halacha b'yadua Esav, sign of Yaakov. Yaakov was hated by Esav. I don't know, did Yaakov Avinu maybe have a big chup? Did he carry a banjo? Did he have a tattoo? Was he conservative? So the whole makoir of this memra of halacha b'yadua she'esav sign of Yaakov, was he trying to emulate, intermingle with the guy? Maybe because he married Love and Arami's a tacht? I don't know. Is that how you're learning? And in general, is an anti-Semitic murderer a lamdan? He knows the difference. This guy's trying to emulate, not trying to emulate. It's just a very interesting chiddush that Rabbi Brog is saying. Let me conclude with something from the Rebbe Reb Heschel, right, Charukas HaTorah, who lived during Zeres Tachtat. He lived during one of the most trying times in Klal Yisrael's history in the Middle Ages, right, when they killed a good portion of Russian Jewry, of Polish Jewry. So he said like this, and it's interesting, when we go to how our Rabbanim, our Rosh Yeshivas, how we're supposed to deal with Chaitim, right? Who was the first Rosh Yeshiva? Moshe Re'eh Nehemia, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. And what happened when Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai? They were sitting by the mount, and it was a tremendous makam of Hoifiyah Mihar Paran. What does it say? The Osame Rivavais Kaidesh. Rebain Rivais Shamalachim came along, right? Miyaminoi Eishta Slamai, right? Great mount. What happens right after Kabbalah Satira? Maisa Egel. right? Kal Yisrael, Avodah Zarah. And what does Rabbi Shalom say to Moshe? Let's get rid of these conservative, these reform, these chaitim. Right? Chaloisam karega. I'm done with them. More than once this happens, right? And what does Moshe say? He doesn't say, wait, you're right. I was expecting Erlicha, B'nai Torah, Tzadikim, Maskim, what's that? What does he say? He says, Mecheni no misifrach asher kasafta. He says, no, you take them, take me. I'm on the same boat. We all go together. This is what the Av HaNeviim says. It's interesting. Rabbi Heschel says a beautiful thought. He says, V'hinei koran or pnei Moshe. When Moshe comes out, he says his face was shining. It was so luminescent. It says they had to put a masfit to cover the beacon that was coming, radiating from Moshe. So the Medrash says, what made his face radiate? Lama karan panav shel Moshe, the Medrash says. And the Medrash says that when the Rabbi Shalom wrote the Torah, there was a little ink left in the feather, in the kul masay, right? And Moshe took this ink and he smeared it on his forehead. That's what the Medrash says. So the Rabbi Heschel lived during Zeres Tachtat. He says, I don't understand. There was ink left over. He says, the Rebbeinu Shalom couldn't figure out the right amount of ink to write the Torah. It was like, you would leave extra money in your checkbook in case maybe you miscalculated, you counted wrong, so you shouldn't bounce checks. He didn't know the exact amount. He didn't have a good accountant. Well, he said, the Rebbeinu Shalom's eshel tamtim bichatzais halayla. And that's who he is. And I'm going to be Mosef. And he smeared it on his forehead. What? It's like a little kid. You left him with some inks. He ran around the house smearing on the walls. What does it mean he put it on his forehead? So Reb Heschel says a Moira de Kavart. He says, you know where this extra ink was? He says, when Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mecheni na misifracha, Chazal say, his name Moshe was taken out of Parshas Tetzaveh to be Mekayim the Mecheni na misifracha, and the word Moshe is taken out of Tetzaveh, so that was before he said Mecheni, so he's gone from Tetzaveh. So there was one extra ink from the word Moshe. It was exactly Mitzumtzum, but Moshe changed the rules in the middle. There was ink from the word, so he said Moshe took that ink and he smeared it on his forehead. So Reb Heschel says, why did he put it on his forehead? So Reb Heschel says, you know what Moshe's proudest thing in his life was? That he was able to say, I want to stand up for the Yiddish people. And he put it on his forehead so that every Rav, every Talmud, every Mashpia said ever, as long as there's somebody who's Makabal a Torah from Moshe Kibbal Torah V'Nasna, if you're one of the Talmidim, you should know, what should be your proudest moment? When you could stand up on behalf of another Yid and to say, I don't care if he was a kaifa by Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu said it, I will stand up for him. That's the Karaner Pnei Moshe. A Madik, he was glowing. He stood up for his people. That's how the Rebbe Heschel says. He took that ink and he smeared it on his forehead, and that was shining. This is Moshe's proudest moment. So what is our proudest moment? When you want to know if somebody was Taka Makabal Torah from Moshe, he's one of those. If he understands that a Rav, a Rebbe, a Malamed, maybe even a friend's proudest moment is when he could say, I will stand up for you. So Moshe said it, Moshe Mehemna said it for the Avdei Avodah Zarah by the Egel. Today we're talking about Tzedek Shenishba. We're talking about people who are, according to the Gemara, they're called Chasidecha because they were Nischaper al Yidei Misasam, Kal V'chayme ben B'nai Kal V'chayme, that these people are all Kedoshim. And what could I say? That if I'm ever in Pittsburgh, I will go say Kapitel Tilim by this Makim HaKeda. Before we go to our Rabbanim, I would like to ask the riddle of the week. This week, I will ask two riddles, and I have a very good one. I say one, but sometimes, what can I tell you? It's not as good as the others, but I think it's still good. This week's Parsha, what does it say? Parsha's told us, Vayetar Yitzchak Lashem, Onoich Achishtoi, Ki Akari, everybody, since the little knows the Rashi, Vayetar Lo Yashem, Ein Edoim Tzilos Tzadik Ben Tzadik, Tzilos Tzadik Ben Rasha. And Yitzchak was a Tzaddik Ben Tzaddik. So here's the amazing thing. The Torah in Siman Nun Gimel, what's Siman Nun Gimel? That's the halachas of the Shliach Tzibur. Paskins, that you want to send a Shliach Tzibur over to the Amid, take a Baal Tshuva, first. And he brings a pasuk. He says, Shalom, Shalom, la rochek v'la karev. Right, Rabbi Shalom says. So he says, a rochek, somebody who's coming from Merchakim, a guy who discovered Hashem on his own. It wasn't handed to him on a silver platter. He says there's something beautiful about it. He earned it. He deserved it. It's his. That's a Torah. And the Taz and Sivkat and Gimel, Paskins that way. Marshal argues, and the Taz says, like the Torah, he says, Avada, a Baal Tshuva has first priority to the Amid. So the problem is, what, did the Taz not know a Rashi and Chumash? It's not only a Rashi, it's a Gemara in Yavamis, and the Samach Beis or something. So he says, he didn't know this Gemara? It's a Pella. How could the Taz and the Torah Paskin, they get a Rashi and a Chumash? That's riddle number one. And I'll ask you another riddle. We have a lot of women who listen, I know, because we get calls from the women. We learned something in this week's parsha. Vayigdalu hana'arim. So the Medrash says when they became 13, Yaakov went to the Beis Sefer, Esav went to Beis Avodah Zarah. So what is the Lashon HaGemara? Amar Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. It's a Medrash, Perik Samach Gimel, Sif Yud, Perik Yud, and here in Medrash Rabbah. Tzarich Adam li tafel v'benai ad Yud Gimel Shana. Mikan ve'elach tzarich shiyamer baruch shepatrani. That's it, 13 years, and then I'm finished with struggling with my son, and tzaras he makes me. Medrash is on this pasuk, this week's parsha. I have an interesting question. And Isha's mechayiv in chinuch. It's a Gemara in Sukkah by Hilni Amalka v'chulu, right? Wow, mothers do most of the chinuch in Jewish house. Why doesn't a mother say Baruch Shepatrani? She's also after 13. He's now mechayiv for himself. Even though Lalacha the Shulchan Aruch pashtus them son even for an issue could be up to 20. Chinuch continues later, but it's certainly not a later date by an Isha than a man. Why doesn't the woman say Baruch Shepatrani if she's also mechayiv in this mitzvah? It's not a mitzvah say she has mangrama, so there's no reason why. Those are our two riddles for the week, and I look forward. By the way, we will announce last week's winner at the end of the program. We will also, if you go online, we have many of the winners, and we only announce one because it would just be too many. And so that would be at the end of the program. So let's go to our fabulous guests. We have the honor of having with us on the phone an old Chava from Lakewood, Rav Shimon Silva. He was formerly Rosh Yeshiva in Greater Pittsburgh. Today he's a Rav in Pittsburgh. He's a Mechaber of Talioris on Inyane Shuvis about Gerus, a Mestayef Gerus. I guess it's very relevant in Pittsburgh Gerus. He's a Talmud of Gateshead, of Agoyin Reb Leib Gurewitz, a Talmud of Beis Medrash Gevaya, a Musmach of Beis Medrash Gevaya. He's the editor of Halachoscope, etc., etc. It's an honor to have you with us, Reb Shimon.
Thank you.
So, Reb Shimon, you're in Pittsburgh, and obviously, maybe during the conversation you could fill us in a little bit of what it's like to be there. But there's certainly a discussion about training a number of balabatim to carry a gun in shul, Shabbosim, Yom Tovim, maybe during the week, so that you don't have situations where you could have one person come in, a Reitzeach come in, terrorize an entire tzibur, and have people locked up in rooms for hours waiting for police to come. We shouldn't be, katsayin latzvicha. So my question to you is, let's talk Shabbos. You have the biggest elements when this massacre happened, the week of the Akedah, the decree of the Akedah. Is a gun muktzah on Shabbos? And are you allowed to carry a gun on Shabbos?
Okay, so let's start with muktzah. The pashtus, a gun is a kli shemelachta le'isser without any obvious use for heter. So, therefore, it's not like a kli shemelachta le'isser that you can use for something else. It's more like, closer to, muktzah machmas chesron kis. Even though, well, probably it is muktzah machmas chesron kis. Based on the way the Gemara defines it as miyachad loy mokim, but pashtus, you have to be miyachad mokim for a gun. You have to. And that's als leisasin domim v'veisecha. You have to have your gun in a very secure place, and you wouldn't use it for anything else. I did see a svara brought by, I have to apologize, based on what's going on over here, I didn't have enough time to look at all the Makoros, but I have seen a svara that a gun that is, you're probably familiar with people who boast about the guns that they're wearing, and they would wear a gun as a tachshit, and therefore it's possible that that itself is considered Malachte leheter. I don't understand it. The pashtus a gun is muktzah. If there's pikuach nefesh, yeah.
Rabbi Silver, I saw for Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, he writes in the Shulchan Shlomo, he actually argues, Rabbi Yashiv names unlike you, that it has a din of a kli, it's muktzah machmasissa, but it would be mutter l'tzarech gufay, like a sakin of mila. And how would you
use it l'tzarech gufay? What's his examples?
I guess to shoot.
That's
right.
To shoot. What are you shooting? That's like when you're talking about matzerich gufay. To shoot is a tzerich gufay. Normally, a tzerich gufay is to that's to move it.
But Rav Shlomo Zalman goes with a different mahalach. Rav Shlomo Zalman says it's actually a klisha malachte leheter, and he says why? He says because the vast majority of the usage of a gun is to frighten.
I saw that svara.
So Shlomo Zalman says...
Is that a use?
He says, yeah, people, Macy's, what's the old story? Macy's has a guard by the front door, not because he's going to check every bag that goes in, but it's to intimidate people. So he says, since a gun is about intimidation, he says, well, intimidation is malachte leheter, it's to frighten people. And if they know that in shoals there are guns, it will frighten. And if somebody comes in, intruder chas v'shalom comes in, it'll cause him to react differently and behave differently. So he names on that it's malachte leheter, which I thought was a chiddush and interesting.
It's a huge chiddush because you don't need to be metaltalit for that. For intimidation, there's no need to be metaltalit. You have it sitting in front of you. I'm sure you remember going into the mikveh in Eretz Yisrael in Meir Sha'arim, and the guy in charge of giving out the towels had a gun right there. He didn't have it. He didn't hold it. He just left it there. You don't need to be metaltalit to have that intimidation value. It's not. You're not being metaltalit for that. That's a big chiddush.
Yeah, it's in Hilchos Shabbos, Shinches Gimel, and Shulchan Shlomo. Unlike you, Baruch Hashem, over here, I had plenty of time to look through my Makoros.
Okay.
And so let me ask you another question. So, well, look, even if it is muktzah, let's go on the tzad that it is muktzah. Both Rabbi Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Yashiv seem to be mata. But even if it is muktzah, the Shulchan Aruch does paskin that muktzah. If you have a case where you have anosim are going to come, you're allowed to hide money. So muktzah b'makom, there were matir muktzah drabanan in many Mekaymis because of where there were these a shaila of chsar and kiss, a shaila that people, it's... I
would rather go with, over here, a shaila of tsar. One of your one of the extra questions that you're asking here is about an isha. So there's pikuach nefesh, there's the other end where there's no danger at all, and then there's an in-between stage where there's no actual danger, but there is tsar because the person is worried.
Okay, and why would you be matir because of tsar?
So there are certain heterim for certain isurim, let's say an isur drabanan, b'makom tsar. So maybe being metaltal the gun. Obviously, you're not talking about pikuach nefesh.
No,
you're talking about. Right, we're not talking about pikuach nefesh, that would be everything. So we're talking about a situation where there's no pikuach nefesh, but you're trying to give some sort of menuchas ha-nefesh to the mispalalim, that they should feel that someone in the building is there to protect them. So that's taking away a certain tsa'ar or discomfort. To be matir something like muktzah, that maybe I can hear a little bit. You're saying even if it is muktzah.
No, I'm going in Shin Lamed Alad Beis. The Mechaber says, Yesh matirim letaltol mois udvarim hamuktzim kedei lahatzila mipnei hadleika oy me'anasim haboyim legazlam. The b'makim pseida ein lachash le'issa muktzah. And
Adam Bahal Alma Moinoi?
Yes, it's a Magen Avraham, because a person gets very rattled. Shabol harde, right?
Right. Adam bol alma moinai.
So there's a
so that's because
fear.
Okay, so that's because we're choshesh that if you not matter him the tiltul muktzah, he'll do a malacha deiraisa.
So we have many svaras. My point is we have both. We have Rabbi Yashiv who holds it's mutter l'tzarech gufa. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman who says it's mutter lehet. It's mutter in ganzen because it's a klisha malachte leheter. And I'm just trying to show other mekaymis where we see that they were matir muktzah b'makim where it could cause a bahala. Right? It's just a svara.
The causing of bahala is to avoid him coming to be over in Nissa Deraisa. So if you're telling me that they might be over in Nissa Deraisa if they can't hold the gun, I hear.
If they don't have the protection. Okay.
Yeah, I think that maybe the svaros of using tsa'ar and things like that might also work. Either way, you're talking about being matter a person to be metaltal muktzah because of these reasons. Now, if there's a tiny chashash sakana, then it's a different story.
So let's talk about that. Would you consider this? Let's talk about, is it considered a sakana? In other words, would somebody be able to carry it in Rosh Hashanah or even in a Carmelist where it's a drabanan, carry the gun to shul?
So
in other words, how rachik do we measure a sakana? I mean, the fact that it happened once in the last, basically 200 years of America, a massacre, even though we've had it in other areas, they've had it in Parkland in general, we see that public places have become, look, there's another shooting, a mass shooting in the United States almost every week in summer, but not necessarily because of Sinas Yisrael. So is that a reason is that enough of a sakana to say, okay, let's be Mechal Shabbos?
They've been listim for all time. It's one of the oldest things, They're always listim. So a person can make an argument, I should be allowed to carry a gun when I walk through the streets because of listim mezuyin. And it happens. All the time people get attacked. And sometimes it's in a dangerous place. If a person is going to a mokum sakana, maybe it's different. But if a person is going to a place which is not considered a mokum sakana, where you let children walk around by themselves, then you don't call that a mokum sakana. So by the same reasoning, of course it's possible. It's possible, anything is possible. But by the same reasoning, we would say that when you take reasonable measures for shmiras hanefesh, and that's enough. You can't, otherwise, ain't no davar safe. A person can get paranoid.
So you would not. So let me just give it some context. Mashal, there's the Noida B'Yehuda Yadua talks about it's in Mediterranean about doing an autopsy. He says, can you do an autopsy to discover why somebody died so that you can prevent somebody else from dying? So the Noida B'Yehuda famously paskins. He says it depends. He says if it's during a plague where there are other sick people like that in front of you, you could be over the Isser Nituche Mesim, and it's considered that the sakana is close enough that it's pikuach nefesh. But he said if it's just about learning in general, he said, then why don't we keep all medical schools open on Shabbos? The person should be allowed to go to medical school. Maybe one day he'll save somebody. So he says it has to be where the sakana is more relevant than just it's someplace out there in the world. So
Same kind of thing. There's got to be lefonecha.
Right, that's what he says. And the Chazon Ish says that la halacha too, let's say, even though you don't go by roi v'achar pikuach nefesh, and even though a suffix hatzala will go on a call, even though it's a 1 in 1,000 chance, but that's called that the pikuach nefesh is lefanecha. So my question to you then is,
let's call it lamdish. It's a vaday leidas hasafik.
Right.
Okay.
So my question to you is, given the fact that, according to the newspapers, there's been a very large the increase in anti-Semitic incidents. And on this website, Gab, there are many people who, said, well, let's go kill Jews. Would you, in your mind, say that has a din for having either a yeshiva or a shul, etc., a din of sakana lefanecha?
At this point, I don't think so. I mean, the place can use the lashon of shas cherem. Shas cherem is when things are hefka. There's no fear of the law. Here, yes, there are crazy people, and like you said, all the time you hear it in the news, but when was the last time you saw it? I mean, I happen to live in Pittsburgh, so I was a few blocks away from this. But for the vast majority of people, it's not Shas Cherem yet.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. If a person were to carry a gun, but not be a dime, but wear it in a holster, right? So there is an Aruch HaShulchan, he says in Shin Aleph, Nun Aleph, he says, Ovid b'tzava melech, it has a din of begadav.
Yeah, famous Aruch HaShulchan.
Famous Aruch HaShulchan. So it's not about carrying. And even though I saw that, the more contemporary poskim are more mesupik about it, I don't think Rabbi Yashiv particularly likes this Aruch HaShulchan.
No, I think that a lot of the poskim, I think even the Tzitz Eliezer is not in favor of it.
So what would you say if somebody said, look, I want to wear a gun in a holster, I'm going to be Saimach and Aruch HaShulchan. I imagine Pittsburgh is probably not a Rishus HaRabim.
We have an Erev.
Okay,
we have an Erev, and that particular place, the Tree of Life, is right inside the Erev. The Erev goes across the street.
Okay, so let's say it wouldn't have an Erev, and he says, I want to be Saimach on this Aruch HaShulchan. As a Rav in Pittsburgh, what would you paskin?
This is, you'd have to, the truth is you have to understand, I've been asked these shilas, especially recently, but even over the years. We've had in our shul people who have carried, but they did it without asking. They'll shop around for a posek who'll give them a psak that it's okay. If somebody asks me, can I wear a gun in a holster in a place where there is no Eruv, but it's a Rishus HaRabim Drabanon, for what? For his menuchas hanefesh? Well, what is he doing?
He's bringing it to shul so that the entire congregation should be protected.
I mean, it's the same question that we've been dealing with. Is there a real sakana?
I understand. So to be doicha,
so you're saying if it's not a real sakana,
but now that we have an Aruch HaShulchan who says it's a drabanan, B, he holds that it has a din of a lavosh, even a deraisa. Somebody wanted to wear a gun to shul for this purpose.
Okay, I mean, I would have to be very careful. You're talking about different people are going to get the wrong idea. It might even touch a little bit on hashkafa. If it's a person who's going to take drabonons lightly as a result, I would not want to give him this kind of a heter. Again, you and I basically feel that this is not a real sakana, and he's doing it to placate his nerves, which is a good cheshbon, but can you be over on a real hotzah for that? I don't know. Now you're telling me it's not a real Rishus HaRabim according to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay,
and I'm also saying we do have an Aruch HaShulchan that says...
And you have an Aruch HaShulchan, yeah.
That says it has a din of a lavosh. At
some point you have to decide, do we or don't we hold of the Aruch HaShulchan?
Right.
So... Again, it may depend on the person. If I say it's a person who's very erlich, a big Yori Shemayim, there are a lot of people who are very frum, who have guns because of their work, and they are threatened at work, or there's a chance that they'll be threatened at work, and they do it very quietly and secretly. And it's a person who's really machshiv all these halachas, maybe, yeah.
We can do away with most of this shaila, either if there's an Erev, or if the people say, look, let's keep a gun in the shul, locked up. When I come to shul, if it's not muktzah, and certainly almost all the poskim today hold it's not muktzah if you're using it for this purpose. I'm a Rabbi Yashiv, Shlomo Zalman, right? The Tzitz Eliezer, most of the poskim. So he says, look, I'm not being nichnas into any suffix iser. I'm going to carry a gun in shul, and we're going to have five.
Or not necessarily carry, but put it down on the bench next to me, let's say.
Yeah.
So that way you're not being metaltal the muktzah. And as you said, you're being metaltal the tzorach gufay, which is okay.
I'm saying, but almost all poskim hold it's not muktzah, the big poskim of the last generation. So you have this guy, he wanted to put it next to him or carried him. Now there's a question, the mechaber in Kufnun Aleph, I believe, or Kufnun Vav, says that
that's already in the weekdays.
A knife, even you're not allowed to bring a knife into a shul because for a number of different reasons. There's two different reasons that the Achrayim bring. He wants to have the gun in the shoulder. Chabad says, I think, because of a knife is mekatze yimei adam and tefillah is ma'arech yimei adam, and other poskim say it's because the reason is als covered base haknesses, just like you have to wear yarmulke in shul, covered base haknesses. So now he says, Rabbi, he comes to you, he says, Rabbi Silva, I'm not going to carry it. I'm going to keep it in my shtenda, in my thing nearby, just in case chas v'shalom nacham meshugana comes. I shouldn't say a meshugana, an evil person, but it's a problem. There's halacha in Shulchan Aruch, you don't bring a knife in. How would you respond?
Okay, so on this there is a nice tshuva from the Tzitz Eliezer. It's in Chelek Yud Siman Yud Ches, and if you want we can go through it, but he goes through it like Kedarkei B'Kodesh. He goes through the different Makairos. And he doesn't bring the Mishnah and Midas. Some people bring a Mechilta over there at the end of Yisroi. There's a Mishnah in Midas that says basically this line, that you don't use iron on the Mizbeach in any way. That's a pasuk, Le'sonef aleim barzal, and the Mishnah in Midas gives a tam for that mitzvah. And the tam is that iron is nivra lekatzer yomav shel adam, and Mizbeach is nivra laharich yomav shel adam. So in the same way, tefillah or a beis haknesses, and that's a machlokes achronim, whether it's a din in tefillah or a din in a beis haknesses. And those who hold that it's a din in tefillah, they would hold that even if you're davening outside the shul, you shouldn't have a knife with you, a long knife. And then the Taz holds even a short knife. So Tzitz Eliezer goes through, what about a gun? So he has a very interesting maskana. He says if you take out the bullets, even the Taz would be masking that it's okay, because the gun itself doesn't do anything. Which is a very interesting chiddush. If you think about it, at the end of the day, the gun is a kli that's nivra lekatzer yomav shel adam. Ein lecha nivra lekatzer yomav shel adam more than a gun. But that's what he says. And he also says that if it's mechusa, there's also a heter. He says if it's mechusa, if it's in a pocket or somewhere hidden away, then there's also a heter. And if there's no other way to do it, and it has to be megula, he's soimach on the poskim that would say that this would be okay. So you can go through the Tzitz Eliezer, and again, you'd need a shikul hadas on a particular situation. If you're in a place where there have been incidents, or the incidents have been increasing, and waiting for the police is not necessarily an option, and you want to have the protection right there, then in a chanami you could be soimach on plenty of mekilim in this kind of thing, at least to have it mechusa. So that would be, let's say, someone in the hallway with a gun, that would also be good, or in the Beis HaMedrash, in the Beis HaKnesses, have it on the chair next to you covered over, or in the weekdays for sure have it in a shoulder holster, something like that.
So, Rav Silva, Agavorcha, it's Tzitz Eliezer, who was my first cousin. I was actually very close to him. His yard site is next week, so it's a nice time to say over Torah b'Shem Amrei. Yeah. Let me suggest a svara to you that goes beyond the Tzitz Eliezer, and that is that when the Shulchan Aruch in Kufnan Aleph says that you're not supposed to bring a gun into shul, the Shulchan Aruch L'Mashal brings many things. You're not supposed to. Knife. A long knife. One of them is don't come in b'reish megula, right? A
long knife. Yeah. So there actually is a shaila about those words.
Yeah, I know. But I want to just bring one point. These are dinim b'pashtus in one of two reasons. Many Achrayim say it's covered base haknesses.
Right, that's the simon. The simon is covered.
Yeah, it's covered base haknesses. So my argument would be when you bring a gun into the shul to protect the mispalim, so it's talking about don't do many things that would not be respectful. Don't bring something dirty, a shovel into the Beis HaKnesses. A guy is digging a ditch. You go into the shul, excuse me, please leave your shovel outside. A guy is a soldier, leave your gun outside. It's not nice. You have long knives, leave them out. But when you're bringing it in to protect the Beis HaKnesses, Fakir, this is the covet of the Beis HaKnesses. I'm doing it to protect the Beis HaKnesses. Just like on the Harabayas, it says you weren't supposed to bring weapons, right, a sakin, but it says, I'm sure they had weapons. That already was part of the covet. And as far as the other svara,
not necessarily. I mean, the poskim say, the Mefarshim say, when they made shomrim around the Harabayas, they didn't necessarily have a weapon. And you have to realize also they used sticks as weapons.
But my question to you is, if it's covered Beis HaKnesses and you're doing it for the covet of the Beis HaKnesses, I don't think it's the equivalent of bringing a shovel in or coming in with your dirty clothing or coming in with hair uncovered, with the head without a yarmulke. That's not covered. This is covered. Our shul has now people to take care of it. That would be an argument. And as far as the other svara, which is a knife is makatzer.
Covered Beis HaKnesses. It's covered for the mispalim, maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
I would think that's
covered. I don't know if covered is the right. Okay.
Isn't covered? I mean,
the question is whether it's a bezoyan of the kedusha of the Beis HaKnesses.
So I'm telling you that you see by the Beis Hamikdash the fact that the concept that they had shomrim was part of the covered Hamikdash. Right?
Those shomrim were lav dafka armed. Those shomrim were l'shem shmira, l'shem l'shem to show that we have shomrim.
I agree with you, but a shomer is part of the covet. Watching something that's precious to us, we guard it, would be part of the covet.
So every shul should have an unarmed shomer at the door.
So I just don't know if an unarmed
l'shem hidur, you know.
I understand that, but it's certainly not a bezayin. It's not a pagam in this thing. If you have a person there, I mean, a president has security, senators have security. The royalty has security.
You could do that outside. You could do that at the door.
And the other svara of the Shulchan Aruch, that it's makatze yamim, which is why you shouldn't bring a long knife in. It's not talking about for security. Adarabba, the not having a knife when you need it would be makatze yamim. Not having a gun would be makatze yamim. So I think even without the svaras that you could be cover it, etc., if it's a din of kavod of the Beis HaKnesses, I would take the position that when you're doing it for the kavod Beis HaKnesses fakert, it's a svara, it should be mutter.
So in a shas cherem, or in a situation where there is a particular threat, I don't think that Tzitz Eliezer himself, Tzitz Eliezer for sure himself says v'shas cherem there's no shaila. But I think the other place can also say, I think they bring it from Rabbi Ovadia Yosef maybe, that even if it's not 100% a shas cherem, but if you have a soldier in the Beis HaKnesses with his gun even though that's a shaila whether the soldier is on active duty or not. If he's not on active duty, then his gun isn't loaded. But if, let's say, it's a soldier on active duty who comes into a shul, there is a tzad to say that his whole job, his whole role is there to protect and in a chanami. But again, we're talking about a situation where there is some sort of a credible threat.
Well, but a credible threat you only need to be mater pikuach nefesh, to be doiche Shabbos. Whereas when you're looking to be the chaymer to be doicha and issa deraisa of Shabbos, that's beskila, etc. So we say, look, what is the bar? It's a pretty high bar. There has to be some threat around. But this person who's wearing the gun to shul, he's obviously doing it because he thinks there is some danger. So on something that's the kavod, which is an orachas chayim, it's a diuk in a gemara in Sanhedrin. These are not isuri deraisa, they're barely derabbanans. So adarab, I don't think you need the same bar that you would need to do nituche mesim or chil Shabbos. Would you disagree?
The thing is that once you matter the chavila, imagine everybody walked into shul with their guns. In a regular town, I'm not talking about in Gush Etzion,
I understand, but it does happen in Eretz Yisrael, Agavarcha, but I don't think in America
does your Rav...
I honestly don't think in America we have to worry about that, do you?
It's laharich yomov. It's a good thing. It's a cover for the Beis HaKnesses. Maybe every Rav should have a gun, and everybody should have one.
Well, don't you think every shul should have a few in it, based upon what happens?
So now you're saying that the shul should have a few based on what happened because of the credible threat.
Or even a remote threat, but why not have it? I mean, there's no isurim involved. Why not have it?
In a covered way, covered up. You rather rely on the Tzitz Eliezer than this idea that you're coming up with, which is to sort of count it as an enhancement of the Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. I think that I'd rather just go with the Tzitz Eliezer, who says that if it's mechusa and that kind of thing, that we can take that.
Okay, what about a lady carrying a gun? You have a shul where the men are, I don't know, maybe they're timid, or maybe so a woman says, you know what, I'm going to bring a gun. Do you think that there's a problem of kli gever?
Okay, so first of all, So first of all, that's the first shaila. A woman carrying a gun even anywhere in her house.
Right.
Right. And the second shaila you asked, what about in a shul? Let's say in the Ezras Noshim. So if we can establish that there's a heter for a woman to have a gun, b'chlal, then the heter in the Ezras Noshim would be much easier. I mean, there's where is it in Hilchas Eidos? I think it's at the end of Simon Lamed Hey in Choshen Mishpat, maybe Lamed Daled, where there's the Takonas HaKadmoinim to be Mekabel Eidos of Noshim in a place where there's no Anoshim, such as, I think the Shulchan Aruch says beferish, such as in an Ezras Noshim.
Yeah, the Ramah, the famous Ramah.
Right, yeah, famous. Takonas HaKadmoinim. I think it's the end of Lamed Hey or Lamed Daled.
Yeah,
so you have already a precedent where in a matzav where there are no anoshim to do something, and then of course obviously you'd have one of the women there doing it. What else should it would definitely be preachers to send in a male armed guard into the Ezras Noshim. It's much easier to get a female armed guard there if that's what you need. And then the general shaila about whether or not there is a problem of women with guns. So it's a big shaila. Rabbi Moshe has a tshuva on it. His tshuva is in situations which are these in-between situations where it's not actual pikuach nefesh, because then there's no shaila. And on the other hand, it's not just for the fun of wearing a gun. There's reasons why at least it would placate the nerves. And I think Rav Moshe brings this svara.
In Gush Etzion. I think he was talking about in Gush Etzion, Rav Moshe, right?
Gush Etzion. I think he brings this svara that would placate the nerves, that would take away a bit of the tsar and the pain. I think Rav Moshe brings such a svara. And that's actually the case that I wrote in the halachoscope. The case was that the husband used a gun because he had a gun, because at work he was under pressure, threat, whatever it was. He was chayshish that the people who were threatening him at work might try to go to his house and threaten his wife. So his question was, should my wife learn how to use a gun and get one? Train to use a gun and get one. And the maskana that I came out with over there, the Isra of Lo Yilbash is actually Lo Yirya Kli Gever Al Isha, is actually from one of the Targumim or the Gemara that says Kli Zayin. And we paskin like that. It's brought la halacha that women should not have Kli Zayin. The reason is, so that's a machlekes haposkim, what the actual reason is. There are some poskim who say, because Kli Zayin are never used in every day. They're only used for war. You don't use a Kli Zayin for any other purpose, unless you're defending yourself from a listim. But generally speaking, they're used for war, and women don't go to war. So, therefore, that's the Isser. Now, in a situation where she's not going to war, she's using the gun, maybe as you said, the Svar from Rav Yoshev or Rav Shlomo Zalman, as a deterrent, she holds the gun as a deterrent, or something like that, then those poskim who say that the only problem is women going to war, they will say maybe this is okay. There are other heterim as well. She's not actually wearing it as an item of clothing. The machlekes haposkim, whether the Isser of Kli Zayin is if it's worn as clothing. Here she's not wearing it as clothing, it's in a purse or somewhere else like that. Then there are tzedadim to say that there is such a thing as a woman's gun. Now that's not going to work if you're going to say that women don't go to war and women don't fight. But if we say that there are occasions when a woman has to protect herself, and especially in the example we would give would be in Ezras Noshim, then women do. They have to protect themselves. So that would be another heter. There are some people there's a machlekas how to learn pshat in Yoel Eishes Chever Hakeni.
Let me interrupt before you'll continue, but Rav Moshe also brings another tzad lahater And the tshuva from Ramesha that you're referring to is in
you have it there?
Chaim Dalet Seminayin. Hey, Ramesha says, he says another reason to be matter, he says he assumes the woman is going to be carrying a pistol and not an assault rifle. And he says,
yes,
right, and he
yes,
says that,
I do remember that.
He says that a pistol is not called the kli that you would use
For a
in
war.
war. Yeah, he says if she would not be able to carry an assault rifle because of kli gever, a milchama, but he says a pistol she would be able to. That's Ramesha's maskan, I believe. Yeah, it's one of his stadim. I'm sorry, continue. We're talking about
Yeah. And there's a machlekes about Yoel Eshes Chever Hakeni.
Right.
She used the Yosed Ha'el. Why did she use the Yosed Ha'el? So some people tie her because she didn't want to use a regular weapon. The dichlei on that is because she did that because she was able to. She first drugged Sisra so that she didn't have to take out a weapon. She could use a Yosed Ha'el. And she didn't have to use a regular weapon. And some people tie her that a Yosed is a weapon. She happened to use a Yosed. That was the best weapon she could come up with. So you have there are tzedadim to be mater a woman carrying. My maskana in that halachoscope at the end was that if there's a real danger, then you have to take the best measures to protect yourself. It doesn't make a difference. If there's no real danger, but they feel safer being protected, they may train for using these weapons in a modest manner. That's another issue. The training, who's going to train her? And if, she's going to have to go training with men, and unfortunately, I'm not making big assumptions over here, but there is definitely a chashash that the type of men who are doing the training for weapons are a bit prutzim. So she's going to have to find a way to train without getting in, without being over on the Gidreit sneers. And in fact, that would be the exact reason, what the Gemara says, one of the reasons given for Lo Yehiyeh Kli Gever Al Isha is because it'll lead to Taruvas. So if she's going to do the training, she has to do it in a way that's not going to lead to Taruvas. Maybe there are women who can train her. And then they can use the weapon if they're threatened, for sure. If they're going to carry it, they should carry it concealed. They can only carry it openly if it's a woman's model and they live in an environment, in a culture where it's acceptable. It's an acceptable woman's tachshit.
Rav Silva, could you tell us, as a Rav in Pittsburgh during this trying time, what it's like?
Okay, so we heard about it during davening, in the middle of my drasha. We have a woman working in the shul, Nochris, who got a call from her granddaughter asking if she was safe. Because the news in the beginning, they didn't say where it was, which synagogue, which congregation. So then she told her what had happened. The original news that we got sounded much worse than what actually was. It sounded like it was very close by. It actually is about 6 blocks away. It sounded like it was more like 2, 3 blocks away, which makes a difference. So we locked down the shul. We asked her to call the police to see whether they could send an officer. They said, no, we're all tied up, but stay inside. And when we get the all clear, we'll give it to you. And eventually we got the all clear, we went out. As I mentioned, we used to have 2 people in the shul who carried weapons. They moved to Eretz Yisrael. We went down to a bar mitzvah at another shul where there were three young people standing outside the shul. Quite obviously they were armed, even though it wasn't showing. And they were standing outside just looking at who was coming in. They know the kehillah, so that helps a lot. If they saw someone whom they didn't know or they were suspicious about, they would, ask them who you are, that kind of thing. And after that, the nervousness went away. But I can tell you that musaf was a very frightening musaf. It's quite scary.
Now, there have been some I would say, fringe rabbanim who have been making comments about it's a conservative shul, etc. As a rav in that community, how would you respond?
My response generally is these people at least thought in their minds they were going to shul. So for them, this is shul. They could easily go to a football game or whatever else people do on Shabbos when they're off. For them, this was shul. So as far as they're concerned, they give up their lives for their religion. You want to tell me that they were kafrim, they were mumrim? Maybe. I don't think so. I don't think any of them were shano piresh. I think that they were exposed to Orthodox Judaism enough that they understood that there are people who hold what they're doing is wrong. It's even possible when a person gets shot, he doesn't necessarily die instantly. It depends where the bullet goes. It's possible that they did teshuvah right before they were nifter. So I don't go for that. I don't go for being melamed chayva on them.
If we need security in shul, should it be done? Should we actually be hiring guards, or should we be arming our own people?
It's a very good shaila.
I mean, it's much more expensive, obviously, for security, and most of the shuls are barely covering their rabbanim's salary. So the question is, how much do we want to take out of that for security, and how much do we want to say, Adarabah, let's just like we do Hatzalah by ourselves, let's do this also by ourselves.
Right. So there are other parts to this as well. Any time, which we should have spoken about right at the beginning, any time a person arms himself, he's touching on the Isra of Leisosim Damim B'Veisecha. He has to be very sure that he knows what he's doing 100%, and it's not going to lead to more problems than without it. So professionals are very highly trained. They're trained to react in ways that people who are not professionals would not know how to react. They actually go through the training on how to react in a critical situation. So that's the tzad to hire a professional. It's safer. The tzad to take people from within, especially in Mashal on Shabbos, but any time, is that, in Hilchos Shabbos, there's a halacha that you don't let if a yid can be mechal Shabbos for pikuach nefesh, you don't let a nachri do it. And one of the reasons, I think it's a Mishnah Berurah that brings this reason, I don't have it in front of me, is that the nachri might be misatzel a little bit, and simply because
the taz, it's a taz.
Simply because they don't. I mean, the Rishonim give other reasons, but this is also a reason. Simply because they don't have the same value for life that we have. We do all sorts of things for pikuach nefesh. Look at the medical establishment. You get all these end-of-life issues. With a Yisrael, it's a whole different. It's different. And being misatzel for a second in this kind of situation is the difference between life and death. So there is a tzad to say, send people of our own to get this very highly professional training, and they will be the people who will be there. We can rely on them, and they will be there. They can't take off. If they do take off, they need to find a substitute. It can't be that they sometimes come, they sometimes don't come. They have to be there whenever they're needed. And if we're talking again about a situation where it's needed. It's absolutely needed. A school, that kind of thing.
I would just, Rabbi Silva, the only part that I would maybe disagree with is that somebody who is employed in the past security guards, most of them are earning, $9 an hour and had 2 hours of training. And I think the amount of training they get is greatly overstated.
You may be right. I haven't checked into that. I would think that they have to retrain every now and again.
We're not talking about military SEALs, we're talking about...
Right, no, we're talking about off-duty police officers. I know what you're saying. It may depend on the particular, police force. I mean, you're right, there are police forces that nothing's going on, and their training was once upon a time, and they don't really know what to do in a panicked situation. But I still think that, of course, you'd have to check and make sure that the off-duty police officer, whoever it is, has that training. He knows how to react in a situation, in a desperate situation. And you're right, of course. We're not going to hire a person who's just putting on the uniform.
Yeah. Well, Rabbi Silva, thank you very much for your time. And from all of Klal Yisrael, we wish the community in Pittsburgh should have a nechama and it should rebuild. And it's and the schus of Yitzchak Avinu, who was the first nekad, right? Should soll beistehen the ganze Pittsburgh community.
And ganz Klal Yisrael.
I think that the Rambam writes that the Mokem HaMizbeach is meduyek moed. I think it's in Perik Beis of Beis Abchira.
Metzumtzum moed, right? Metzumtzum moed, meduyek moed. Yeah,
something like that. He says.
Mokem shenivra sham nischaper.
Yeah, and he says that that's the place where Adam Rishon brought his carbon.
Yeah,
he says that's the place where Yitzchak Avinu was nekad. And I think that the United States has its first really Mokem HaKeda. And it's, to my knowledge, this is the first time where a community was assaulted. Somebody says, I want to kill the Jews. So when now somebody passes by the Tree of Life synagogue, it became a Mokem HaKeda.
It's a very interesting thought.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rav Silva.
Okay, Kalto. Bye.
Bye-bye. We have on the phone with us the Rav of Chabad of Parkland, Florida, where there was a massacre in a school where, 4 Yiddish Kinderlach, 1 teacher were killed. He's also the director of North Broward and South Palm Beach. Welcome, Rabbi Shuey Biston.
Thank you.
Rabbi Biston, as somebody who was the rabbi who, I guess, officiated over the Levias and over the counseling, can you give us sort of a snapshot of what it's like being the Rav of a scene of a massacre?
Well, the truth is nothing can properly prepare you for that moment, when you get the call. And when I got the call that there was an active shooter in Parkland in our school, obviously the first thing I did was I ran over to the crime scene, knowing that there would be all these children and parents that would be in a moment of trauma, looking for their children, looking for their loved ones, having so many questions. Someone has to speak to them, counsel them, guide them, as well as go through the process of actually making sure that the mess is dealt with appropriately according to halacha, as far as, having someone with them and the cleanup and so on and so forth.
And did you officiate over the Levias? I mean, were you over the 4 children and the teacher?
A couple of them I officiated. Others were members of other congregations in the community.
And how did the families deal with the trauma afterwards?
So we're still dealing with the trauma. It's something that every single day is a different challenge and different questions are asked. Especially when we heard the news of Pittsburgh, this reawakened those moments, the trauma that we lived with during those times. And as a matter of fact, one of the parents, Ilan Al-Hadef, the father of Alyssa, who was tragically killed, a 14-year-old girl, the first thing he said when he heard, he called me up on a Sunday morning, and he said he wanted to go pay a visit to the families up in Pittsburgh. And we, of course, made a connection with the local Chabad Shliach in Pittsburgh, Rabbi Altine, where they met, and he has been going from home to home with Ilan to these families just to give nichum and try to make sense of, have the conversations of how he dealt with it. And he told me that he specifically felt the need to fly up there because, when he was going through that moment over here, him and his family, the outpouring of love from Klal Yisrael around the world and people flying in from all over the country gave him a sense of real family that although he lost a child, he felt that he also gained so many more family members, knowing that when it comes to times of tragedy, unfortunately, it doesn't happen more often, but Klal Yisrael certainly is linked together, and we really show that spirit of Rabbis Yisrael in these moments.
And let me share with you that a Nobel Prize winner in Eretz Yisrael in mathematics lost his child. I believe it was Daniel Kahneman, but I could be wrong because there have been more than one. and he was inconsolate. And during the Shiva, Rav Goldstein came, the great Goyen from Netzach Yisrael. And after he left, he said that he was the only one who was really able to be Menachem him. So they said, what? He said, Rav Goldstein came to me and he said, I lost a child who was killed by the Nazis. And he said, it was my only son. And he said they sat and they wept together. And he said the fact that somebody who had been through this situation, he said, and Rav Goldstein told him, he said, the difference, he says, my son wasn't Zeichet to Kfuras Yisrael. He said, and your son was Zeichet to Kfuras Yisrael. So he said the fact that there was somebody who had actually been in that situation and was able to relate to it gave him a level of nichumim that nobody else was able to give. So when a parent from Parkland can go there and be menachem these people, it has a special taikif. It's like, you see the Shulchan Aruch Paskins in Pekachaylim that has to be B'nai Giloi, Ben Giloi is Ekadin, etc., Ben Iroi, Ben Giloi. So somebody who has a shaykhis to it has a much greater level of tanchumim.
It's interesting you say this because, you bring up the story of the Holocaust and a lot of people making comparisons how this is the largest attack and the worst attack on the American Jewish community in history. And, some of the rhetoric that's being said and people trying to give reason to it, it's interesting that when this killer came into that synagogue, he didn't scream that, all Reform Jews or all Republican or all Democrat or all Orthodox Jews should die. His cry was all Jews should die. And he lumped us all together. We were all one. And I think that is our response as well, that we're all one. We're one family. And, I remember my mentor, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, spoke many times how the same enthusiasm and energy that Hitler would focus to hunt down every single Jew to kill them, even taking resources that he desperately needed on the front lines, but to go find a community of 10, 20 Jews to kill them, we have to have that same tenacity and sense of urgency to hunt down and find every single Jew to bring them back to Yiddishkeit, through exposing them to, of course, Torah and mitzvahs. We have to, and this sort of reminds us of that moment when a killer screams, all Jews must die, our response is all Jews must live. And we have to live as Jews, and we have to be Makar of Yidden to Torah and mitzvahs.
So you're saying that the antidote to Sinas Yisrael is Ahavas Yisrael?
No question about it. We know that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed b'tzad Sinas Chinam, and it will be rebuilt because of Ahavas Chinam. Senseless love to another Jew, regardless of their background, regardless of their affiliation, regardless of their stance on different issues. The fact is, a Jew is a Jew. And if they understand it, if this killer understands that all Jews must die, then certainly we have to understand that every single Jew is connected through our neshama, and we have to reach out to every single one of them as if they were our own brother or sister, because they are.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Biston.
Have a good day.
We have on the phone with us Rabbi Yoel Schonfeld. He's the rabbi of the Young Israel of Kew Garden Hills. He's also the head of the board of the Coalition of Jewish Values. He's a Talmud of both Keren B'Yavna, and he got smicha. He learned in Lakewood. He got smicha from Rav Shneier. Welcome, Rav Schonfeld.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the promotion as head of the board. I'm actually vice president of the Coalition for Jewish Values, and it's an honor to be part of that organization and an honor to be on your program.
Thank you. So, Rabbi Schonfeld, do you think it's important for, given the tragedy that happened in Pittsburgh, that every shul should have it in a few people who have a gun on them, or every yeshiva should? Like, I read that these people hid in a room, many of them, for an hour and a half in terror. I mean, what were they going to throw? Chamashim at this fellow? So, and after the tragedy in Merkaz Arav, they were massacred, that there's a few people with guns in the yeshiva. Do you think, rather than being helpless sheep in our yeshivas, in our shuls, have a few people who are responsible, who are trained, who are armed, and therefore, if Chas v'Shalom, some other Saini Yisrael comes, and, B'chol dar v'dar emdim aleinu l'chalei seinu, we did what Yaakov Avinu does. He was Meicher Atzmei L'Molchama, and given we're going into these parshas, is there Maisi Avis Simul Labanim to that? B'charbi uv'kashti.
Correct. Those are very good. People forget about that. Yaakov Aminu's and one of them is diplomacy and davening. All that's very important. But you're right. You have to be prepared for the worst militarily as well. Now, it's a dilemma. I have to say, it is a dilemma. In that, you can also. Well, first we have to start out by saying, as David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Hashem lo yishma ir shav shakat shomer, that if Hashem is not interested or is not protecting us, then all the shomer, all the protective gear that we bring along is really not going to help in the long run. So we start with that premise. Now, but as far as what our obligations are to Muhammad, as you put it, and Baharbi, as you put it correctly, it's a dilemma for me, because there's also a saying, live by the sword and die by the sword, that people who go around with guns, with weaponry, are also most likely to be on the receiving end of those same guns and weaponry. And the most militant people amongst us find themselves targets at some point. So it's a dilemma. Also, by our very nature as Jews, the word gun itself was an anathema. My grandmother, Shalom, she was a Yakata woman, was under the thumb of Hitler in Hitler's Germany, and she would not want to see us with a water pistol when I was growing up as a kid. Jews don't take guns, and that was a very prevalent. Abikst was like, Yiddish for gun is like almost a dirty word. So on the one hand, it's not always the great idea to go running around with guns. On the other hand, and it does have to be emphasized, we can't be foolish. We have to be chachamim with einenu v'roshenu, and we have to realize, especially in light of Pittsburgh, what's happening. Now, we had a gathering in our shul this past Sunday, immediately following the tragedy in Pittsburgh, and we had Tehillim, a few words of Torah and Chizuk, but we also had the local police come down, some representing the New York City department, not just our local police. This question was put to him: should we have people with guns, train people in guns in our synagogues? His answer was, he actually danced around it a bit at the officer, because he didn't know what to say directly, but the short of his answer was, they can't be cowboys. If they're going to have guns, they have to be seriously trained, meaning you can just pass, you can get a permit because your record is clean and you're of sound mind, you're a responsible person. That does not necessarily mean that you're trained. And that's what he was saying, is that you have to be a trained person. And therefore, I would say as follows, that if whoever takes it or is assigned to carry a pistol or some kind of weaponry in your shul has to be seriously trained, but rigorous training to know how to use it and when to use it, and under how to react under duress. So I would say that's my qualified answer. Yes, I think it's a good idea, but whoever does carry these guns must undergo serious training. I myself went to a training course by the police a couple of years ago. I didn't go through the entire course, but I was exposed to how easy it is to people at the wrong time. So what I'm saying is, idea must be very seriously taken and guarded. Now, I'm putting aside the Shabbos issues of carrying weaponry. That's an entirely different matter of halacha. But as far as the concept, yes, if people are very rigorously trained.
So in your shul, are you going to institute something like that?
Well, we're first meeting with the police. We're having a subsequent meeting with the police. The police have called, there's a chief of the whole South Queens, whose name is Barrere, a very serious man and very high up in the top of the command of the New York City Police Department. He's meeting in our shul this coming Monday night with local rabbis, local presidents, and that's one of the topics that will be discussed, is if, how, and when we can train individuals to carry guns. In other words, it's more of exploratory, just let's see what this involves, more than actually a planning session on doing it. But we want to see what this involves, if it's something we can even entertain.
Now, when you're saying your grandmother said that, a Jew never carries a gun, and, it's almost like a joke, how the Jews are so, in that respect, are so helpless and not aggressive in that respect. In fact, I once heard a joke. Somebody said, there was a shul. They were leaving Ma'ariv one night, and like 20 people came out of shul, and they saw two big goyim coming down the street. So the Yidden looked at themselves and they said, "Oh, we better be careful, because there's two of them, and we're all alone." So,
we're all alone.
Yeah. So my point is, but that isn't that like a little bit of that, pre-war Gullus mentality, where they would bring two Nazis in to round up a village of 500 people and shoot everybody, and was that a good thing? I mean, the Shulchan Aruch in let's say in Shin Chaf Tes and in Hilchos Shabbos talks about the concept of Shin Chaf Tes Vav about Avdei Kechavim Shetzaru al Ayoris Yisrael Yoitzin Aleim B'Chlei Zayin Mechalen Es HaShabbos, like this helpless sort of attitude. When you go down south, everybody has a gun. That a Jew should carry a gun. Chas v'shalom. You don't see it in the Shulchan Aruch. It seems to be something later imposed on us by and it didn't serve us well.
Right.
That helplessness did not serve us well.
You mentioned that Gemara Yotzim Mifli Zion. Rav Meir Schlesinger, who was the Rosh Yeshiva way back in Yeshiva Shalavim, he was the son of Dr. Falk Schlesinger, the founding doctor in Shari Tzedek, a real Frumi Yekes, and he was a Talmud Chacham of Rav Meir Schlesinger. So he told us that there was a time when the Arabs were coming in and around Yeshiva Shalavim, or they got word that they would be coming around, and on Shabbos. So he ordered local army and his boys to go around on Shabbos in some kind of patrol cars. They minimized Chilul Shabbos by keeping off the lights, whatever they can minimize, but they patrolled around with weaponry. Word got back to the Stipler. He told us directly. He was mishpach of ours, and he was my father's house for Shabbos. He told us to us directly. He said the word got back to the Stipler, and the Stipler summoned him and says, "What's tutzachta? What are you going around in cars and Shabbos? It was unnecessary." He was very upset. So Rav Meir explained to the Stipler what was going on. He got it as hearsay. So he explained to them and the actual imminent threat that they were facing. And the Stipler says, "Oh, in Cain, it's a whole different story." So so right, you are right in that you can ascribe this to a gullus mentality that a Jew doesn't carry a gun, look at a gun. But times certainly have changed, and we have a Jewish army. But what I am saying is that all the Jewish army and all these people that carry guns are people that are trained. Soldiers are trained, and if we're going to be a soldier in the shul, we have to be trained. We can't just say, "Here's a gun, wear it, and protect us." It has to go with rigorous training. And I'm not addressing. I'll say this again. I'm not addressing the issue of Chilul Shabbos for that, but right now just the concept of bringing arms to shul. So in the balance of things, you're right. We can't just lie down as sheep, as we've seen, unfortunately, in Pittsburgh this past Shabbos. But we have to take it seriously because some of our chavre like the idea. I carry a gun. I'm a cowboy, so we got to be very, very careful about that. It takes serious, mature people to handle this.
So let me Rabbi Shimon, let me. Aruch HaShulchan already in Shin Aleph and Sinun Aleph, when it talks about the Haitzah and Shabbos, the Aruch HaShulchan already writes Bala Milchama K'mei Ovid B'Tzava Melech Heim K'Begadav, and it's mutter to carry them even Rosh Hashanah. He says it has a din of Begadav, a little bit of a controversial psak, but Rabbi Yashiv, who was more recent in Chele Gimel Sinun Aleph of Kovetz Shuvas, writes about Shomer Ir going out b'Chozayim b'Shabbos, and he's matter it as well. So we'll go through on a different with one of the Rabbanim, all the halachas, but it clearly there's these are shilos that are very current in Eretz Yisrael, and for the most part, Rav Shlomo Zalman as well will matter it.
So surprise me.
Now let me ask you something. We have Hatzalah. Now clearly, Hatzalah members are very highly trained, and they've saved countless lives.
Right. So
why can't we as a community do similar to, enact something similar to Hatzalah, where, yes, there's a training program, and it's a lot shorter of a program to use a gun than how to become an EMT. So whereas a community, would it make sense for us to put into a training program that just like there's a Hatzalah, we call them Shomrei HaChaimis or Chaimesayich, Yerushalayim, Hamadati Shomrim, the Shomrim of some type, where every shul has 2 or 3 members. Now we could even minimize the Chol Shabbos because they don't have to carry it to shul. They could keep it locked up in shul, and when they get to shul, they put it on. So there's no shaila of haitzah. And as far as muktzah, that's already a much simpler shaila. You know, the Shulchan Aruch, I believe it's in where is it? In Shin Lamed Daled talks about, or I'm forgetting. Yeah, I think it's in Shin Lamed Daled Beis. Talks about lagabe issa muktzah. Even if there would be a din muktzah, but in many extenuating circumstances, the Shulchan Aruch says that you're allowed to be metaltal mois dvarim amuktzim kedei latzilim epnei adleika. And as well as Rav Shlomo Zalman takes the position that it has a din of a klisha malachtei leheter. Rav Shlomo Zalman says it's a klisha malachtei leisser. It's mutal l'tzarech gufei mekaymei. So muktzah is a very minor shaila. So forgetting about haitzah, just have a locker. There's 3 or 4 people in the shul who are trained like Hatzalah members, and they come to the shul.
Not most communities have an area these days, so Hatzalah might not be a shaila altogether.
Yeah, well, it depends what community you are. It's some there are communities that have an area of communities that don't clearly, and that way you're talking about there's almost no shaila lahalacha if there's the haitzah being the big shaila, right? And the training them like Hatzalah members. What do you think about that?
No, I would agree with you. Of course, if there's a shaila altogether about bringing a gun, you're supposed to bring a wallet into the Beis Hamikdash. You know, you have to certain respect for the kedushas hamakom too. That probably should surface as a question, but I agree with you. In fact, I didn't think of such a proposal. You're proposing it now, and I like that idea. That just like we train for Hatzalah, although it's much more natural for Jews to be trained in Hatzalah because it's drilled into us. Pikuach nefesh overrides everything. So, what could be a more noble cause than Hatzalah? Carrying a gun is something that it's counterintuitive for certainly B'nai Chutz La'aretz to deal with. So you have to have some psychological training as well. So to get us into that frame of mind. But it's a good idea if it's done under the authority and under the with the approval of major poskim. I think it's a just like Hatzalah is. I think that's a noble idea, and that it should be recommended. We can't dismiss it anymore by saying, Marish Kai, we're talking about, you're overreacting. We're not overreacting. Look what happened in Pittsburgh. And not only that, they were going for every reason. They shoot up high schools. They shot up a church a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we just had on the Rabbi of Parkland who was there, who buried, said, 4 children and a teacher in his shul.
There you go. Unfortunately, tragic. It's a crazy world we live in, and we have to deal with this crazy reality.
And Rabbi Shul, I think schools should have it as well. Like, schools have a number of the teachers, because you can't react immediately, but it shouldn't be where people have to hide in closets for an hour and a half hoping that the police find them.
Of course, President Trump proposed that, and the left killed him for it. But he's not going to spoil from the left killing him because he would have been dead a long time ago. But yes, I say yes to all of the above. But I think that with the right training, it's a great idea. But there are a lot of also irresponsible people who want to do the training, who feel that they're a master in weaponry and guns, and we'll show you. It really has to be done under very sophisticated guidelines and restrictions, and really very serious training. It can't just be sign up here and get your gun. What you're proposing is something very interesting. I think it'll take a while till the mainstream in our Orthodox world comes to grips with that. It won't be easy. It won't be an easy task. A lot of Rabban will be resistant, as my own teva is to be resistant. But we have to come to grips with reality, tragically so. And to say that this is an anomaly, what happened in Pittsburgh, I'd love to think so. And it would prove to be so, but we can't. We have to be maskin as atzmeinu l'milchama as well, as you put it. So
thank you very much, Rabbi Schonfeld, for your time.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.
Kulta, bye-bye. The winner of last week's riddle contest is Reb Zev Fromenhaft. Here's Reb Zev's answer.
Shalom, my name is Zev Fromenhaft. I heard your riddle this week, the second riddle. Rosh Shlomo's question about Isaac b'mitzvah, Patam and a mitzvah. I wanted to let you know that in the Sivis, in Simenayin Beis, says that a mitzvah kiyumis, there's no halach of Isaac b'mitzvah, Patam and a mitzvah. And then Rabbi asked that question from Meichrit Son and Mezuzah, that you see a mitzvah kiyumis has Isaac b'mitzvah, Patam and a mitzvah. But I think if you look carefully at Rosh Shlomo's letter, in the back of Chedush of Shlomo, you'll see that that's not the teretz Rosh Shlomo was saying. Rosh Shlomo says his only question is based on the Rashba, the Ritva, and Sukkah, that not only do we say Isaac mitzvah Patam and a mitzvah, but there's also an Isser to stop doing the mitzvah you're involved with to go do the other mitzvah. So based on that, he asks this question, how is Avram Avinu allowed to stop doing the mitzvah, Kabbalas Pnei Shechina, to do Achnas Azorchim, if there's an Isser involved? So on that, Rav Shlomo says, the Isser doesn't apply by a mitzvah kiyumis, only a mitzvah chiyuvim. So the Gemara is talking about the fact that they're Patam in a mitzvah. Rav Shlomo is coming to say that the extra thing, the Ritva says that there's an Isser, that doesn't apply by a mitzvah kiyumis. Avram Avinu didn't have to stop Achnas Azorchim, but he was allowed to. There was no Isser involved. And therefore, because Gedol Achnas Azorchim, that's how Avram Avinu decided to stop doing Kabbalas Pnei Shechina, even though he didn't have to. That's why he decided to stop doing it, to be able to do the mitzvah Achnas Azorchim. So Rosh Shlomo is not saying the same as in the Sivis. He's saying the mitzvah kiyumis only doesn't have the Isser, but even though it does have the Ptur of Isaac mitzvah Patam and a mitzvah. Shkech, thank you very much for all the wonderful programs. Kol Tov.